Thank you for joining today's webinar event organized by the Hong Kong Life Sciences Society. So my name is Janice and I'll be the MC for today's event. And so to start off, I'd like to welcome our two speakers, Ms. Kelly Ting and Ms. Gladdy He, who will be sharing their insights and experiences about working in the life sciences sector. So a brief introduction about Kelly. She is currently the Associate CEO at Sanomics, a company striving to revolutionize current cancer treatments by providing safe and efficient liquid-based genomic tests to patients. And Kelly has also been working at Sanomics for over 4 years now and has taken on various leadership roles during her time here. And as for Gladdy, she is a member of the Hong Kong Life Sciences Advisory Board and is the founder and CEO of Become Consulting, a company she founded with the vision and mission to develop top global organizations and leaders from China. She has over a decade's worth of experience in leadership consulting and has a track record of achieving strong business growth, garnering her high-profile clients like the government and healthcare agencies. And so without further ado, let me invite Kelly to share her insights.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for HKLSS for inviting me for the sharing today. And thanks, Janice, for the nice introduction. So I think I give some background of myself before I giving some tips and sharing. So I'm Kelly, and as Janice has also introduced, I'm working in a company called Sanomics Limited. This company is a genetic testing company based in Hong Kong and is located in Hong Kong Science Park. And I worked in this company for 4 years. After my graduation from Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, I was studying like a BBA, not really a science bachelor degree in my university. So after my graduation from BBA, I was studying information system and management, nothing related to science. But I go to a genetic testing company, which required some science, many science background. And so after that, I meet my alumni in secondary school, who is the CEO of Sanomics. And he is inviting me to see whether I'm interested in going to a genetic testing company to do the sales. So for me, I think it's a really big challenge. Firstly, I'm not very talkative, but it's fine. I think it's so interesting that this field, genetic testing, especially for our company, is working for a cancer patient. So I say, okay, yes, it sounds like a great job. So I just go to Sanomics after my graduation. So as I say, this field, biotech, most of the people has to keep studying and so I start to study biology again after many years in secondary school. So after getting into Sanomics, I was being a sales in Hong Kong region, and I go to meet with different doctors, telling that genetic testing will be benefit for their cancer patient. So usually a doctor will require a test, genetic testing for their patient who has diagnosed with cancer testing. So after they diagnosed with the cancer type, so they will send the genetic testing to find the treatment for the patients, which is like a target therapy treatment, immunotherapy treatment, instead of the traditional chemotherapy, which may hurt a lot to the patient. So for target therapy, firstly, you got to find out the target. So who find the target will be a genetic testing company performing genetic tests, finding the gene mutations, and then doctors will treat based on the report. So basically speaking, our company is providing lab testing and to the doctor, and doctor based on the testing result to treat the patient. So after doing a year in Hong Kong market, knowing what's going on in genetic testing field, study enough for the basic biology of a human. So I go to start the Thailand branch for my company because we was expanding in 2019 to Southeast Asia. And the first location that we choose is Thailand. So I go to open the branch there, set up the laboratory, set up the office over there. And thanks to COVID, I stayed there for 2 years and working with many Thai people. Actually, only me is a Hong Konger in Thailand for 2 years and working with local Thai, study Thai language, and stay there for 2 years until everything is on track. The sales is our brand is being known by different public and private hospital in Thailand. And I back to Hong Kong last year, starting my associate CEO job in Hong Kong. Help to merge the company, actually merging with our competitor after 3 years. So working in this company, me and the CEO has merged our company Sanomics with a competitor called ACT Genomics. They are a Taiwan company. So that's why now we will call ourselves ACT Genomics and Sanomics Limited. That's the like brief introduction for my 4 years working in Sanomics. And as I've said, I'm actually not studying life science career and not studying life science, doing my bachelor degree. So finally, why I've chose to work in biotech field. Firstly, I think this field has future. A few years ago, until now, I still think that. Yes. Secondly, I think it is meaningful. So especially for our field, doing genetic testing, sometimes report can save the patient's life because cancer is something like you need to fight with the timing. So for us, we think we are actually doing something meaningful to a cancer patient, and we would like to help patient to have a faster result, a better result, more accurate result. So that's the reason that I choose to work in the biotech field or working in Sanomics. So each year, actually, we have recruited many interns starting in 2018. Some of the interns I've also invited to go to work with Thailand with me before. So for our company, you may see that actually our average age is around 28, 26, something like this. We're actually a very local Hong Kong company. So what we are doing is that we would like to get more local young Hong Kong students, graduates together with us, working on something meaningful. And for the students who are really working in who we have chosen to work in our company, I think they have the thinking that being brave and never afraid to get something wrong. Because you're a student, right? You got no experience, and there's it's just very common that you make some mistake, and that is very normal. So for the student that I choose to work in Sanomics, I think they are not afraid to making something wrong, willing to try something new. And that is the element that I think is very important for youngsters. You will never know something until you get it wrong, you get it right, and then you suddenly thought that, oh yes, that's wrong, that's right. That is something called experience, which can help to improve this kind of situation. And for the biotech field, especially for biotech field, I think we need someone who is willing to try right, and also try wrongs. So that's why I think it is very important to get someone who can actually try right and try wrongs, willing to try as well. As you may know that the government, especially President Xi, who has visited Science Park on 30th of June. So after his visit, I think both Science Park and also the government are going to put more resources to the youngsters to help to do some biotech startups in Science Park. So I think in the coming years, Hong Kong will be a very important location who will have many resources for doing biotech. And I think it is very important for the students to to get well prepared in the school life, go to more biotech companies, life science company to give a try, try right, try wrongs, and see what you want, what you need. And after graduate, you can pick a job that you really want to do. So that's all that I would like to share for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly, so much. It was really interesting getting to know your career journey and also the qualities you look for when hiring young graduates at HK. And so now I'll pass on the time to Gladdy, who will now present her sharings. Please, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. And I think Kelly's sharing is very fascinating as a young talent and into the leadership and working in the startup or the biotech companies. It's truly exciting. What I want to share with you is what we as a HR consulting firm observed in China and in Hong Kong, particularly Greater Bay Area. What are the market trends? Very briefly, our company called Become Consulting, we're really with a mission vision to work with a biotech company, the local company, innovative companies to go global. As a result, we want to build the talent from China to global. So here's my job, my career history. If I start introducing, it's going to be the whole day. It's a long journey. But in a nutshell, I was like you were before, and with a lot of aspirations and dreams. I'm also following I wouldn't say typical, but more or less the path of overseas returnees. So I was born and raised in China, educated in China, finished the undergrad, went to US to study and get 2 master's degrees. One is on the agriculture resource economics. That is following the family path, because all my family members are agriculture economists or working in the agriculture related field. But then I realized quickly enough, been getting a PhD in that field, come back as a professor is not my passion. And then I decide maybe I should really experience the business world. And that's why I got selected and went through the interview process and started working for GE Capital Market and Risk Leadership Program. As you might be aware, there are a lot of global companies or the big local conglomerates having this type of a leadership program, which is also very valuable to you as someone who wanted to join the workforce. And I think my first 10 years career development mostly benefited from this 2-year training from GE Capital Leadership Program. You can call it management training program also. What they do is give very systematic training. We're rotated to 3 subsidiaries every 6 months and working side by side with senior management team, like VP, SVP, from the marketing to the risk management, and then to the overall business. So, and also learning how to be the green belt and the black belt methodology, on the system, on the programming. And that is a really intense program. We also had opportunity to listen Jack Welch speech. That's why I think when I left and then joined another company, I feel, wow, what I learned from this big company is really beneficial. And of course, then afterwards, then I joined and changed my career into HR related consulting. I worked for Gallup Consulting in their human capital consulting, and the university, they call it, university is more of a leadership training, for almost 11 years, 6 years in US and 5 years in Singapore for the Singapore. While I was with the company, I did my MBA, executive MBA at Wharton. That's sponsored by the company. I think that's also something you could consider down the road. And a lot of people, after 3-4 years work experience, they either continue with a PhD or they continue with a business degree. Actually, I think it would be more beneficial when you have experience knowing what you want and understand the real world, instead of just go straight from the undergrad into master's degree. Of course, science degree is different. And I've seen a lot of executive or a lot of people, they went from undergrad straight into the PhD program. And afterwards, and they start the working experience. In order to have a more of a scientific rigor. So we've done a lot of project working with the Fortune 500 companies and the Asian and the Chinese companies on how to build the talent and how to select the talent, which is truly fascinating, including a lot of life science companies. And for the last 11 years, I worked with Korn Ferry, a number one exec search firm and leadership consulting firm, and they're listed in the US stock exchange. And I've been leading the Asia Pacific life science practice, work with a lot of scientists and entrepreneurial and a big MNC general managers and stuff. One is helping company find those top talent to fill the position on the recruitment side. And then 2 is answer the question, how can we really build an organization with a great talent that is not just at the very end when they're all mature, but also from the beginning, from even the campus recruitment journey to the middle level development and then so forth. So many people and many organizations now equipped with the concepts of agility. What I mean agility, adaptability is, and they're not just looking at your education background and experiences. They are increasingly, a lot of companies looking at the culture adaptabilities. Are you able to work in a Hong Kong company, in a Chinese company, or a global company? What are the mindset? Or if you've never done something before, they throw into the water, can you do it? And that is agility, increasingly important in this very, we call it VUCA, volatile, ambiguous, uncertain world. So I started my own company January this year. after working over 20 years with large multinational companies and global companies, that is a really truly refreshing journey, because I think we have our mission and vision to help and working with our client from the total solution. For that, I think, and we're not just working in silo or working with a technology or biotech companies on the pure recruitment side, but fully understand that their strategy, their needs, what type of people really fit for them, what type of people can grow from 0 to 1 in that stage, or from 1 go all the way to IPO and pre-IPO, or how the company can transform them and upgrade them to a global company. Very fascinating. So before you join, I actually talking with the host and with the team here. I said, our company also looking for people, even though we're only 6 months old. And we work increasingly with the global company, regional company, and Chinese company who either start up or scale up. So our team helped them to hire a lot of C-level, middle level, and the entry level. And we also work on the assessment and so forth. So we have office in Shanghai, Hong Kong, and Singapore already. Soon we're going to have a strategic alliances with 2 global firms. So the difference between the startup versus established company is you really don't know what you're getting. And you need to learn on the feet. You need to learn, deal with the challenges. So my suggestion is, if you want to go through a systematic learning, maybe going through the leadership development program from the big companies, or going through a traditional firm that will help you to get on the big platform, be trained systematically. But if you're more courageous and bold, and you should join a startup company, and but learn to deal with some hardship, because one day you're doing this type of job, and the next day you will be asked to do something else. So that's a flexibility we have to deal with, especially you are in the scientific field. You're going to be working with a lot of startup companies, and in that sense, don't expect everything is given. So knowing the culture of the company, knowing who are the leaders or your supervisor, and just thinking about what you can relearn and contribute, that is very important. So with that in mind, I would like to share with you some market trends for China, mainland China, and Hong Kong. You probably would say that has probably nothing to do with my job search, but I can assure you, when you start to talk with HR, you start to talk with your alumni or some senior people, your understanding of the industry will really help you to get ahead. And that, instead of just saying, I know this this testing methodology, and this is my IP, which is important, but also the mindset and ability to grasp quickly the market evolution will give you a plus. So of course, when we look at the Hong Kong market situation, actually, in the last 10 to 20 years, Hong Kong healthcare, private and public healthcare expenditure is close to 7%, which is actually much higher than mainland China. And the PVC companies spend a lot of money and focus on the senior care area, given the aging population. And Hong Kong medical and healthcare equipment devices mainly target the household consumer market, especially in the segment of imaging and high-value consumable, like in vitro testing, like IVD or medical imaging. This has to do with adjacency to Shenzhen, to Macau and Guangdong, and that's where they are quite strong with it. If we look at the investment on the senior care, and you can see there's the example of companies being invested or raise the funding. They're working on either remote care or nursing care or technology that help with the monitoring and chronic illness. And as the contrast, if we look at mainland China, mainland China IPO and the fundraising has been booming, although we see the dip in the first quarter this year. And given the lockdown, given the whole economic situation, they're still having very robust and the momentum. So compare the Hong Kong listed company with A-share. A-share is China domestic listed companies. We see that they're already, for the 800 company listed, around 9% and life science companies. And if we look at the composition, 25 pharmaceutical companies in the Fortune 500 listing, and they are rapidly expanding to be the regional and the global companies. Hence, we see the setting up of the offices in Singapore, Southeast Asia, US, and also in Europe, particularly in Ireland, given the tax benefits. Here's a little bit examples of the company that are listed. Then I want to share with you, Hong Kong is a key national development area for biomedical industry, which has been really rapidly in the recent years. I think particularly benefited by the Hong Kong Stock Exchange policy. Here you can see from the 2018, the what they called 18A pre-revenue company are allowed to be listed. What does that mean? Before the company listed to Hong Kong Stock Exchange or A-shares, they need to show the revenue, the profit in consecutive 3 years. But now, if you can show the pipeline and with a clinical development stage products, with the innovation, the company can be listed. Of course, in here we show the examples. You can see a lot of them. Some are quite famous, and I think might be you're already working in there or intern in there. And I've heard, Janice, you mentioned you already got an internship or working with a global company. I think some of those companies, they have ambition to become the future top 10 global company, like Beijing and like Sanobi, etc. And so we see that the biotech company will become a biopharma and will grow rapidly in the future. So please stop me if I talk too much, and I want to make sure I'm not I'm leaving enough time for Q&A. And here is the major challenges for life sciences. I will give you the high level. You can later on circulate and the PPT when you need. And I think there are three major challenges in recent years. And although I think China and the Greater China market already become the second largest, the healthcare market globally, and of course number one is the U.S. By 2030 or even earlier, we believe that China will exceed U.S. as the largest healthcare markets. It's already past the Japan market. So we think there's a rapid changes on the policy and the regulation landscape. And for example, on the volume-based procurement for certain products, particularly on oncology, on some clinical care and consumable products, and also the policy on new product launch regulation with more focus on the innovation, the best in class and first in class. And also our survey share a lot of companies, and they are building the team on the market access, on the government affairs to help the product and getting the listings in the hospital and in the public purchasing. And then the second challenge is on the epidemic situation or pandemic situation, which impact the functions and particularly on the hospital operations. And because the patient, sometimes the hospital shut down, impact and how many patients can getting access, and also impact how the pharma biotech company operating. And when I talked with a client last week, they mentioned they're running a multi-clinics in Hong Kong, and they said that they quickly set up the testing center for the PCR test and or the vaccination test. So that's the example of on the feet running. So how would that impact the business? So the sales marketing got impacted. You cannot go directly to see the KOL or hospital. And then we also see the government affair team and the R&D team. So there's a booming of online internet channel, not only for the communication internally, externally, but also on the business model. That's why we see, and the post-COVID, a huge demand on the digital positions and people who understand the AI, who can work with AI drug discovery on the online medical expertise. Of course, and there's the innovation capabilities. When we talk about innovation, the company increasingly mentioned about the product needs to have the local market acceptance and demand, and also needs to be competitive, having a differentiation. So as well as be able to adjust and the policy influence and attune to the business models. And for instance, even for the genetic testings, or even for some of the traditional farmer development, they're all looking at multiple ways. For the business model means they can work with the global company on alliances, or working with the local companies, form that strategic partnership. So, and you will ask me, what are my opportunities then, given so many changes in China? I think if we look at where the capital goes, where the investment, hot money goes, and there are 5 areas. One is on the disease prevention, diagnostics, or also particularly on the disease areas brought by pandemic. And secondly, on the infusion of the digitization and innovation development that I mentioned. And then the advancement of the CXO, that means the service business, CRO, CDMO, to support the drug development. And of course, the 4th is on the consolidation integration of a branded hospital, healthcare business. And the 5th is opportunity and the challenges for the senior care in response is the aging population, which means including the testing equipment and as well as the services and so forth. So there are also very important trends on the Greater Bay initiatives that you must pay attention to. So for the Greater Bay initiative, it's basically including Shenzhen, Guangzhou, Hong Kong, and Macau in the Greater Bay Area, given that that the strong resources, medical resources in the region for clinical trial and for the innovation capabilities. And here I shall now go to the details. Basically, if we look at number of new the medical products brought into the market and registered, as well as type of a clinical trial being conducted, and the medical device business, and the Greater Bay region actually counted more than 20% of those activities. And even more importantly, in terms of the language, the Greater Bay share the same dialect like Cantonese. So when I speak to the hospital, they're also talking about cross-patient referral, and how the physicians can work in mainland China, or how they refer the mainland China patients to Hong Kong to try to creating those kind of a flow naturally. And then, okay, also, yeah, I think it is talking about some details on the drug and medical testing. So the strength of Hong Kong talents, and I think sometimes I've heard that the students or people in Hong Kong mentioning that because the Hong Kong market is relatively small, and they feel there are limited opportunities. But I think given the huge and the needs and the demand for the healthcare companies, they actually in recent years tap into the talent in Hong Kong and in Singapore, and especially those who are fluent with English Mandarin and also Cantonese with a multicultural background. And so some of the benefits I think we learned from the employees when they look at Hong Kong talents are, in terms of the good quality universities. And out of the total universities, there are quite a few of them ranked as the top 5 globally, and also with very rich sponsorship and funding sponsorship. So when you look at the internship, I think there's sometimes options, a couple of options. You work with the university professors or academic center where they got really good funding. And I think recently few biotech companies, they are actually funded by the professor from the universities. That is a place you should definitely look at. And secondly is NGO. The NGO, I think some like Gates Foundations or some are working for the senior research or even the long-term neurology or the Alzheimer research and then so forth. They are not commercial, but I think they have more of exposure with a collaboration with the United Nations, with some of the government. And then third, of course, is into the for-profit business, large multinational companies or biotech companies. And then the other strength we see for Hong Kong talents is the exposure to the overseas market, and because of language advantages, and also connectedness with a global practice, such as the US FDA, the Europe medical agencies, and they consider the Hong Kong talent as a middle ground, a linchpin between the mainland and the US or Europe. So I think your language capability is quite important. And I think sometimes when we try to hire the students from the local Chinese universities, and the language, especially the communication skills, will become a bit of a disadvantage for them. And of course, then we will say, what are the weaknesses for me as a fresh grad or the students who are looking for the internship? I said weaknesses, not necessarily, maybe it's a gap you need to develop. Sometimes if you apply the job to the company in China or internship, they would say, well, you're not really familiar with the mainland China policy. You don't have a lot of exposure to the job, or you could say, I don't have a lot of job or exposures to mainland China, or maybe I cannot speak Mandarin. That is the language barrier. And some even ask me, do I need to know the Shanghainese or a different dialect? And the answer is no. And Mandarin and English are really a common language. So what would be our recommendation? And I think, first of all, when even you are the freshman or sophomore year, always looking at keep understanding of the trends. What's going on with overall policy? What are the trends? Which will help you to look at the sectors that's going to be more robust and that's going to be helping you to learn more. Instead of just saying, oh, well, I think AI is really hot, crypto is very hot, and the technology and tech sector is hot, I'm going to follow that. And definitely looking at what will be more sustaining. And pay attention to the details. And that's one thing. And then secondly, focus on the development initiative and then make full use of the Hong Kong R&D health innovations. That's where they feel we're getting this talent who are different because you are eager to learn, you are able to really introduce some of the global mindset and into the business. And of course, and when I say focus the industry trends, we mentioned about a digitalization on the senior care, on really for the few areas in the biotech industry, or even for the multinational companies, they want to foster collaborations and business model innovation. And then thinking from your perspective, what I can do to add more of those values. So when I see this, you could say, I'm from different major, and then what would be relevant to me? And then here, and we look at very hot jobs. Of course, and I'm looking at different levels. When I look at from the healthcare industry, the chief medical officer, chief science officer, finance officer. But if we look at a lower level, it could be people who are doing the toxology, and you're in the biology, know how to do the screening, working with AI companies, on the drug discovery stage. Or if you're saying, I am, in the medical field, and then how do you work with physicians and the medical operations? And there are CRO companies, and there are local traditional CRO companies and digital CRO companies. And what would be your interest, right? And then strategy and the planning and the BD. Those actually offered by some companies with the rotation programs. And then you are able to go through different departments, finding a good mentor. And a regulatory, how to register the products. And because you're young, you don't have the direct relationship with a government official yet. But they're looking at your ability to file the paperwork, understand the details of the filing process and procedures. Of course, we're also looking at investment relation. How do you, initially doing the research, understand the advantages of this of your company and the market, and how to sell the company, position the company in a favorable way. And of course, AI, are you a good programmer, or you are an architect or engineer? How do you integrate with this? And if you are already having a dual major or double major, or that's even more beneficial, because a lot of company, they looking for cross-culture, interdisciplinary students. So if you are really pure science focused, if you start to learn the communication or understand a little bit on the finance side, and you will become more well-rounded. Here I also listed some of the website and the sources for you to look at the job opportunities. And I think LinkedIn, they closed their China operations. They changed from the social media platform to a job board. But still, you can post your CV. You just cannot see how the other people, their comments, and they interact with other people's CV. But in Hong Kong, you can still see. So LinkedIn is still a major source for many companies. And then China also has some website. One is called liepin.com. One is called the Mai, and then Wuyao Jobs. And those are like job boards. You can certainly post in your CV. But I must say, oftentimes, more than 50% of the job is done through internal referral and internal job boards. And those jobs, and they think they cannot find, and they often go to the advertisement and a post on the website. And so that also means you need to really talk with your alumni and alumni associations and alumni who already worked in China, and try to learn their companies, and also attend the career fair and job fair, and also networking with some of your mentors and the senior executives. What I say is, if you can do some trips, the trips that is in China or in Guangdong, in Shenzhen, that or even the universities that have the partnership with your universities, that will give you more exposure. Do not just wait until the time you are starting to look for a job. That's probably a bit late. Then also, when you seeking your internship, I know some students tend to try different choices, and some stick with one company. That is all fine. I think especially when you are just like first year, second year, you can even take some non-paid internship, and in exchange for the opportunities. And I have quite a few clients, and then they taking some non-paid internship, but most of them they're the paying jobs. I think this year the job market is a bit tough, because a lot of Hong Kong, the Chinese graduates, and they're seeking the job opportunity. But unfortunately, for life sciences and healthcare industry, there's still significant needs for the new graduates. So from that sense, I think you need to be more flexible, and you need to really know how to sell yourself. So I'm sure your school already teach you how to do that, and do the some do in the case interview preparation, and they're looking at the company website, understand that they are the advantages of and knowing the company well before you go on the job interviews. So there's small things like that, and also always prepare some questions to ask them before at the end of your interview, and be knowledgeable. So with that, I think there still will be a lot of things you need to do, but I always say there are a lot of opportunities for you. I hope, and with the online activities, if you cannot meet people in person, actually give you a good excuse to meet them online. My son recently landed his internship in the US. Of course, and he's not in the life science space, he's in physics and material science. And so his dream is working for Elon Musk's the research lab. He cannot join the SpaceX because they only hire the PhD students or the PhD student as the intern. So he studied at UPenn, and then he said, okay, I'm going to work for my professor. The professor granted him the research scholarship, and then they're working on the nanotribology and the frictions and then so forth. So I asked him, I said, oh, your other students and your friends, they work for some companies. They make more money than you during the summer intern. He said, I know I probably make less. I got paid a minimum wage, but I think if I lay out this good foundation, if I help the professor to have some really good research and the paper published, or even get more product development project, and I think next year I will for sure land on a good internship or a good project. So when you look for the internship and the job, don't just looking at how much they pay you. Again, look at what's your end goal when you graduate. And what do you plan to do? Maybe if you want to get a more academic focus, getting your PhD. So with that in mind, making your choices on the internship. Okay, so I will stop here. I think I probably talk more than I should, and I welcome questions. And I'm sure they probably everybody had a lot of questions to Janice as well, and then Callie.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Gladdy, for sharing your unique perspectives on the current healthcare market trends, challenges life sciences companies are facing, and also, most importantly, the upcoming opportunities in mainland China. And so now we'll move on to the Q&A section. So please feel free to raise your hand using the Zoom function, and we'll invite you to unmute yourselves, or you can also send questions into the chat box. And also, just to start us off, maybe I'd like to ask Kelly and Gladdy, maybe what did you find the most challenging when you first started your career in the biotech or life sciences industry? Maybe Kelly can go first.
Okay. First challenge is that I find after my graduation, and because working in Sanomics is my first job, so I find that something that I did is not meet with others' expectation too. So something I did is actually I think is correct, but actually that is wrong. So when it's first time to accept this kind of, you face this kind of situation, after you do graduation, actually in the first year of working, it happens many times, and you will think that, oh, actually it's not as I think, and you got that feeling absolutely for the graduates. But I think that's fine. Like when time flies, time pass, and you set up some of the experience, some of the thinking on working, not just on studying, then everything is back to normal. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, well, I have to really refresh back many years ago. And I think I will combine my experience when I first graduated, and also combine the experience with the life science. Because I did not study life science. Actually, when I started my job, I'm not a life science focused person. I only got into the industry of life science when I came back to China 2011. Um, so I think from my experience and also from working with the scientists, um, it is, I think for the graduate student, they often very lost, not because the technical side, but also, but it's more on the communication and on the business side. What I mean is, it's very easy that you follow the instruction of how to do the test and how you write a protocol. But I think the most difficult people to work with are the physicians and scientists and artists. And because they are sometimes have their unique personality, or they're like artists that have a creative mind. So I find when some of the interns or the fresh grad and working in the lab or working with a scientist, they got confused because sometimes they give the clear direction, sometimes they don't give the clear instructions. I think who worked well is, first of all, you need to clarify the expectations and what expected of me, and also constantly communicate, check with your supervisors, and then check with the people, so that you will not go too far and you realize I'm ready, I was wrong. And then secondly, I think it's initiative. Initiative means doing things that's not necessarily written in your job description and it's not told. And so when you're doing a certain clinical trial, when you're working on some chemicals, and you will think about, what are my competition doing? What are other people doing? Maybe there's a different way of doing it. Maybe there's approach can help us to fast tracking the process, or simply something you think it's maybe not necessarily right, even has been done for years. Those are what I call creative mindset or strategic thinking. And that will set you apart from other people, but it's difficult. And so only when you challenge yourself saying, yes, I do what you told me, I fulfill my task, which is basic, but then I will do more. And so what I find is the typical student, good student, who always listen, who always follow, will have a challenges of help the professor to the manager and the professor to understand and finish the job on time. But then more of a company nowadays, they're pushing the student to be more flexible, to learn more. Then where you will find, I don't have a very clear goals, or I should do something different than what is challenging the status quo. That I think is become more of a norm in the jobs.
Yeah. Would anyone else have any questions? Please feel free to raise your hand or also type in the chat box.
One thing I want to mention is, of course, you're young. When you look at your first internship and your first job, it's a big deal. You're like, oh my God, if I don't get it, and if I not getting my dream internship or job, this is the end of the world. No, it's far from the end of the world. and do not let this idea limit you. And I've been working with people for, senior people who with the 20, 30 years experience, and I see the evolution of their jobs. Say people like me who was a finance major, I did not do any finance work, or people who are the scientists that turn out to be the general management role, and people in finance into a legal or into different. And really what this internship and the first job does to you is to help you understand the real world and how the business operated and how the research is operated and how you are interacting with the team. So learn to work with other people and learn to continue to craft your future career path. And so normally the first 5 years is you will see people are trying to change more jobs or change their focus. because that's what I call the trial period. And you learn different things. You don't like it, you move on. And that's the beauty. But then after between 5 to 10 years, that's where you start to build your expertise and you become a manager, and people look at you like, what experience have you built? Did you take certain certification, exams? That's where people judge you by your expertise. But then afterwards, and after the 10 years, even 20 years, a lot of them do not ask only what degree do you get and what, the patents do you file. More, they said, how many people did you lead? What transformation can you bring to the company? How do you empower people? So those are the different things and different stages we're looking at.
Oh, I see. So maybe like along the lines of, coming out, finishing your education. So maybe what kind of tips and advice do you have for us fresh graduates with like breaking out of your comfort zone and also adapting to the workplace?
Yes. Kelly, do you want to talk about it?
Okay. I think as I just mentioned in my sharing, just try more. As Gladdy just mentioned, as a kind of trial period during the first few years, even though in your internship as well. So try wrongs, try rights. So if you didn't try, you don't know, is that what you want? Is that what you would like to do in keep doing for 10 years or a few years, or you're interested in something, because sometimes something in your mind is different with the real world as well. So until you try it, so you will know you like it or not. Yes.
Right. Definitely, I fully echo that. So if I look at the turning point of my career, and I think one, I benefit from the wise people and my mentors or coaches. They really help me. You might say, who are my mentor coaches? Well, how come I don't have? Yes, you are. You have your parents. If you don't like to talk to your parents, and you have very good alumni, or the people who graduate earlier, you can even have your professors or the people from the industries and that you respect and who are willing to spend time with you, or even your managers or the supervisor from the place you work. So at my critical transition point, and I have my mentor, and they're telling me I should follow the passion and I should do what I like. Because when I graduated from Wharton, obviously I got an offer from Wall Street, right? And they said that you can join the asset management firm, you can do the finance, which make more money, and it looks much glorious. But then my mentor said, really think about what you're good at. You might make more money, but you will be happier working with people. You should continue to do that. That really helped me. So I did not take those jobs, and I came back to Asia, start working on a leadership consulting. So that, I think, is important. Talking to people who know more than you, or talking with the people you trust. And sometimes, they will give you the different perspective and be open-minded. And then secondly, so when I came back to China, I was, so the Convair offered me the job. He said, would you like to do a recruitment, executive recruitment? I said, I was 15 years out of China. I don't know anyone in China, or any HR or business leader in China in the life science field. I can only name 2 companies that is life science, because before I was really a generalist in the consulting, HR consulting. That's how I started. But I think what really helped me is that the tenacity, don't give up. And because I'm not science background, when they talk about the molecules, when you talk about the chemical structures, that was really difficult. But I think what I share with them, I said, look, I'm not an expert of the science, but I'm an expert of people. I know how to evaluate them. I know how to see to help the company to become better. So I think for you, when you might have a strong scientific knowledge, or you still need to learn to have a strong scientific knowledge, but always be humble, always try to learn. And I remember one of my mentors said, he already retired, who was our ex-chairman. He said, if you really want to know people well, give you a goal. You meet 3 people per day. and you'll meet 1,000 people per year for our business. Okay, I think for you probably will be, you also need to meet maybe one scientist or few leading scientists or the people you admired once a week or once a month, somebody that you don't know, you want to know, attend the meetings and attend some events, get to know them. And then now I think I really achieved that goal. And on the LinkedIn, I got a lot of connections. And what does that do to you? So a lot of our scientists, and they are really just focusing the lab work. But in the end, what takes you far is the connections, and the connection bring you the open-mindedness, the knowledge, is perspective that will not limit you, just do one thing, and it make you have a very flexible mindset and a growth mindset.
Yeah, I think everyone can definitely take all these tips into consideration and also, adopt a growth mindset, especially when progressing through your career journey. And so I think that wraps up today's event here. So thank you so much to Gladdy and Kelly for sharing your insights, and also everyone for joining today's event. I really hope that you found today's event rewarding and learning, especially when learning about the current trends in our job market and also what qualities employers are looking for in candidates. And so if you have any more questions, please feel free to share it to register@hklss.org, and we'll also ask Gladdy and Kelly to answer afterwards. And so just a reminder for next week, we're going to have the online panel session on the development of biotech and healthcare industries in Hong Kong with Mr. Andy Wong from Invest HK and also Mr. Edward Chan from the Hong Kong Science and Technology Park. And the date for this event is next Saturday, 16th of July from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. And so for more details, please visit the HKLSS membership platform. So thank you so much. Oh, we have another question, sorry.
Oh,
Oh wait, it says from Lan Gao, may I ask which career path will have a better development, RA or PV in pharmaceutical companies?
they are very different. Kelly, do you have suggestions or?
I think you will have a better suggestion.
Yes. Because they're very different if you look at it. And of course, the bottom line is you need to know the products. You need to know the technology and the sciences. And RA means regulatory affairs. And that is, I mean, both are very important. That's why I love to work in the healthcare industry. It has to do with the human life. So the reason I said they're at the different stages. So regulatory affairs means the product need to be registered in order to go to market, to be accessible to the patients. So for that, you need to comply with certain rules, protocols, and standards. That's what they do from the regulatory affairs. To do that, of course, and like I said, you need to understand the product knowledge, but also to grow as a head of the regulatory affairs. Some people need to have the government relation and ability to working and act with the government authorities, like the China the FDA or the US FDA. And so for PV, I think it's like a pharmacovigilance, right? I think that has to do with the safety. And what are the effects when people taking the drugs, and there's a pre-drug discovery or pre-launch phase, and how much the drug to be used, and what is the quantity, what are impact on your metabolism, and afterwards, when the drug already administered to the patient in the market, what are the effects? So I think both are very important. Has to do with the safety of the human lives, but they are very different. I think regulatory would have more exposure to the external and also at the beginning with a lot of process. And then pharmacovigilance has still to do with the drug development stage or preclinical or the clinical development. You're working with a different team more internally, or if the company has the CRO contract services, you need to work with them. So I have to say they are very different. Ideally, you should try both. But I think one is more on the looking at the data on the world in the lab. The other is more also looking at data, but communicating externally. So you have to look at what type of person you are, and because in the end, it all converges. And it all converges to the leadership. And at the leadership or senior level, the compensation, everything, all similar. But at the moment, I must say, if you ask me between the PD and the RA jobs, which are hotter at the senior level, I must say the regulatory. Because if you don't, like you open the tap water, and if you don't open the tap, the water cannot come through. So if the regulatory the work is not done, you cannot sell the product in the market. So that's critical. So that's in terms of the timing and priority, I would say, for business, for you. And since I don't know you, and you really have to look at what you want to do, just give it a try.
Yeah, I hope that answers Gal's question. And I think that's the end of today's event. And once again, if you have any more further questions, please just send them over to inquiry@HKLSS.org. And yeah, thank you so much everyone for joining. And also once again, thank you to Kelly and Gladdy for joining today's event.
Thanks everyone, and good luck with your internship or job search.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye-bye.